what's good for us is it landed in America, and we have the benefit of his wisdom and his performances. Ladies and gentlemen, Bاسم Yusuf. Hi. That's quite an entrance.
It's the Apollo. I mean, I'm sorry, your mom is
the
listening.
World famous.
Your mom is listening, and I don't want to swear.
You can.
It's the freaking
It's not Egypt,
Apollo.
buddy.
Believe me, you can swear in Egypt, but not.
Not at certain people. You can swear down.
Yes.
Not up.
So thank you so much for coming. Oh my God. I mean, it's amazing.
You filled it up.
It's amazing. I mean, you know how amazing it is? These people are paying tickets for a podcast they can listen to for free. Thank you so much, guys. Mm-hmm. All right.
I didn't invite those people.
That's cool. It's just people shouting Arabic things, scaring the shit out of white people. That's fine. It's fine. It's just like this
story of your life.
Yes.
Right.
That's why, you know, Arab people, they avoid first class because they want to be as far as possible from the cockpits. They want to be like back there.
So they're the anti-Scott Pruitt.
Cool.
Can we start at the beginning?
Yes.
Not birth.
Mm-hmm.
So you became a surgeon, a heart surgeon. Is that the hardest kind of doctor to become?
That and brain surgery, yes.
Yeah. Why'd you do that?
To please my parents.
Yes, you're a better son than. Although then I never became a comedian.
Well, the thing is, like, if you're in Egypt, you're allowed only 3 choices: to be a doctor, an engineer, or a disappointment. And
that's very similar to India.
Yeah,
actually.
exactly. And this is kind of like the status of middle-class families in Egypt. My son the doctor, my son the engineer. That's it. And all is left now is to get them married.
Right. So, what was it like growing up in Cairo, back when you grew up in Cairo?
We were middle class, as I said, and we feel privileged according to a country like Egypt, a developing country like Egypt. We went to good schools. I was a nerd. I went to the school, got high grades, went to medicine. But even when I was doing medicine, I felt that there was something missing because I didn't really like to be a doctor because all doctors have a God complex, they're assholes, and I didn't want to be associated with them. And then I always wanted to have my own social life outside of medicine. So I always played sports and had hobbies that don't really go with being a doctor.
What kind of hobby does not go with being a doctor?
Dancing.
Dancing?
Yeah, I did salsa for 10 years, and then I did tango for another, like, a considerable amount of my time. I did salsa and tango, yes.
Okay. I mean, that's great.
Yes.
Was there a lot of opportunity?
As I was a resident in heart surgery, I had the biggest salsa class in Egypt. I had like 50 people coming to my classes, each class.
You were teaching salsa?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I was a badass.
I wouldn't use the past tense, Bاسم.
Well, but here's the thing. This was frowned upon. This was criticized by people in my circle as doctors. They would say that this is not... It's not something a doctor would do. And I was judged not because of my work or my level of expertise as a doctor, but because I went out there and danced. The reason why I mentioned that is people take salsa and tango and dancing lightly, but the thing about judgment, in certain places in the world, dictatorship doesn't start from tyranny. It starts from judgment and infringing on your personal life and telling you what you can and cannot do and what is appropriate and what's accepted by society or not. So this, even before the revolution, thank you. I'm going to start my classes 52nd Street very soon. And
did you ever see the movie Footloose?
Yes.
Okay.
But the thing is, this is like a way that, like, when the revolution happened and those young people took to the street, most of the discussion for the older generation was they were disturbed because they didn't like this kind of disruption of the status quo. Anything that disrupts the status quo is frowned upon, whether this was calling for the fall of a dictator or going out and dancing and doing, your own thing. And even after the revolution, when had my show, I didn't think too much about it at the time, but my Facebook profile was public. You know, I'm a regular guy, and my pictures were there. And the Islamists and later on the pro-military TV stations started to go in and pick up private photos of me during dancing.
In compromising tango positions?
Oh, yes. In compromising, I mean, hey, it's like before horizontal tango, there is vertical tango, and it starts from there.
I'm just going to tell my son, just keep doing the Rubik's Cube, buddy.
And the thing is, this was actually like a big issue used by propaganda against me, as he is not good enough to speak about democracy because the democracy that he wants is about sexual freedom and douchebaggery. That's
Wait, I'm sorry, what?
That means like being, like, you know, being
okay.
a deviant, sex-hungry, whatever. Anyway, so that was used.
Which you were.
Absolutely, but okay. This is the way they attack. They don't attack your ideas. They don't attack what you propose concerning democracy or freedom of expression. They will go to the private life, and they will try to compromise you, even if that is just like, you know, we're dancing, we're not doing anything. But that was enough for people to use that against me and other people, to tell them this is the kind of freedom that they want to bring to the country.
Right. Before we get to the moment where you decided to start doing satire and comedy, especially with respect to the leadership of Egypt, before you did any of that, were you a funny person? Like, did you make jokes in the operating room over the beating heart? I mean,
no.
What were you doing?
There's one rule in the operating room,
yeah,
which is the senior surgeon makes the jokes and everybody laughs. You cannot not laugh, and that was.
And you were the senior surgeon.
Oh no! I was.
Okay.
I'm the one who's doing the laughing, and it's. But like, you have to imagine, these are like operations that go to 5 and 6 hours. People are not like there discussing Kafka. They are actually, you know, cracking jokes and, like, you know, talking about stuff. So actually, some of the best jokes are cracked into the operation room. But I was not exceptionally funny. I was not the guy who goes in and I was a nerd. I went to medical school, so there's.
So over countless operations, you learned at the feet of the head surgeons.
Yes.
Who you had to laugh at.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That's my experience in comedy.
That's good training.
Yes.
So then you get to this point where you decide to make YouTube videos.
Yes.
On a lark.
Mm-hmm.
What happened?
Well, I'm gonna go back a little bit. Like, why did I decide to do the YouTube videos? Because when the revolution happened, I mean, I was not a political activist.
Right. Remind people what year the revolution was. When?
The revolution was 2011, 25th of January 2011, and like many people, I was, you know, surprised by the fact that there are people in the streets calling for the fall of the regime. That was something that I've never seen in my life. I mean, 30 years of my life, I'm under the same president, which, you know, gets a little bit comfortable, repetitive. And I always say, like, in the Middle East, we have a long-term relationships with our dictatorship. And it's family thing. And it's kind of like, I always say, like, this is the problem, this is the difference between you and us. You kind of, every 4 years, you kind of changing your president like a Tinder date. You swiping at the left. So we have stability more. And what happened was that I was not an activist, but I was, like many people, like, fed up with the same president, and there was like news about him giving the president to his son, and so I went there. I didn't try to protest or throw rocks. I just went there as a doctor, trying to treat people in the square. And there's one night where I kind of like, I wanted to do a more active role. So there was like a kind of like a line of a confrontation between the people in the square and the thugs that were pushed by the government in order to get them out of the square. And they were like throwing rocks at each other. And I wanted to be active. And I said, like, you know, I'm going to just collect my courage, and I'm going to get a rock, and I'm going to throw it to the other side. And then I got it, and then I threw it, and it slipped, and it hit one on the back of our side. And and thank God I was wearing a white coat, so that gave me protection. So I just turned around and just like went back to fixing wounds instead of causing them. And And that was the 18 days. I mean, the 18 days, I mean, we were happy. We celebrated the removal of the dictator, Hosni Mubarak, at that time. And during the 6 weeks after the revolution, people started to collect the videos of the Egyptian media. And I remember, like, I was in the streets, in the square, seeing a certain reality going back, faced by a different reality on television. That was a reality that was totally made up. I mean, if you talk about fake news, I mean, we've got it. And I said, like, somebody needs to remind people of what was the media doing while they were in the streets. So I started to collect and edit the videos and did these videos in my laundry room. And I just released them. I said, like, maybe 10,000 people will watch them.
Right. And how many people watched?
Like in 5 weeks, actually 6, 7 weeks, there were like 5 million people watching. 5 million is like how much your cat gets, but at that time, 5 million was a big number back in Egypt. And suddenly every single TV network started to contact me to start a show on a TV. And at that time, I was already accepted in a pediatric heart surgery fellowship in Cleveland. And I was waiting for my H-1 visa. And I know under Trump that will be a distant memory, the H-1 visa. But I was waiting for the H-1 visa to come. And when it arrived the same day where I was having the contract that will give me a 1-year contract to do a TV show. They came on the same day. And I had to make a choice. Should I continue like healing people's hearts, or should I choose money? And I chose money. And I did.
You were destined for America.
Yes, and then there's the issue of my mom. She's gonna be deprived of saying like my son the doctor. So we made a deal. She was happy that I would stay, and she said, but like if you're gonna stay, you have to continue being a doctor. So I continued doing my shifts. And
so you were moonlighting.
I was moonlighting.
Doing another show.
Yes,
right.
Or moonlighting being a doctor. So, yeah. But like, I would attend the operations and I would give the lectures because at that time I was an attendant surgeon. And it was difficult actually to try to explain thoracic injuries in the ER where people are laughing from last night's show. And it was difficult, but I continued doing that for 1.5 years, and then I chose to continue with entertainment.
So that show became a runaway success.
Yes.
Ultimately, your viewership per episode was what?
In the second season, 30 million. In the last final season, it was 40 million.
40 million?
Yeah, 40 million.
What does that tell you about what people in Egypt and other Arab countries were hungering for, that 40 million people were tuning in to watch this former doctor make fun of the regime?
Well, in Egypt, we have a very long tradition of comedy, but most of the comedy was either social comedy, and if it would talk about authority, it would talk about it in an indirect way. And this was the first time that we go and actually make fun straight ahead, like in your face, speaking about whether religious authority or military authority. And for them, this was, even people who didn't agree with you would still watch because that was interesting. So under the Muslim Brotherhood, I would make fun of the Muslim Brotherhood and the presidency, and my show would show on Friday. And the next day, on Saturday, there were like 4 or 5 religious channels. They are replaying bits of my show, and then they come back. It's like, this is not acceptable. But one time as they came back, actually they caught one of the guests laughing. And so I had kind of like a free rerun on the opposition channels. I think the 30 or the 40 million people, I think half of them were hate watching the show. And I really have to thank them for the rating.
So when did the death threats start?
It happened under the Islamists when a group that were fanatic supporters of a certain Islamic leader started to threaten they're going to come and burn the theater. And then there were phone calls getting to me from people warning me that they heard this and that. And you don't know which one is really, which one is not. And then it became even worse under the military when there were people coming and putting the theater under siege. And you don't know if these people are paid or they're real people, but you don't know in a moment of anger what could happen. And I took a decision when I was doing the show that I should not worry about this. Because at the end of the day, you have a show to do. You cannot be affected by that.
So you didn't cut back on your comedy or on your criticism in the face of threats?
Yes, because if you do, the people watching the show will feel it. And they don't give a rat ass what is happening to you. They want a good show. So at the end of the day, the people watching, they need to have the same exact quality every time. At one point, when I was arrested for the general prosecutor, and I was going to be interrogated, and everybody in my show said, "We're going to come to you. We're going to stand in solidarity." Like, no, guys, we have a show after tomorrow. If you come with me and I'm back with you here, there will be a very bad show. If I go there and get arrested, we have no show. Right. So you have to focus on your work. Nobody will say, "Oh my God, he was threatened. He was under pressure. The jokes were not nice because he was stressed." Nobody cares.
Right. So you either do it fully,
I know,
or you don't do it at all.
Like I'm painting you guys like a kind of a bunch of zombies who don't care, but like I'm talking about like the general view, like, you know, people watch television, they don't care.
So ultimately,
which is not you.
Ultimately, there was a campaign against you by the regime. You were threatened. You were fined. You were interrogated. Tell us about the interrogation.
Oh, so
how do you interrogate a comedian? I have some familiarity with interrogations, and I'm curious.
So I woke up one day and I found that from television. Somebody's calling, it's like, "Bاسm, you have to turn on the television right now." And I watched and said, like, the general attorney, which is I think the district attorney here or something, they have issued a warrant of arrest against me. Not a subpoena, but an arrest. And I was in the theater with the rest of my team. And I called the lawyers, like, "What does that mean?" It's like, "I don't know, but it seems that you have a warrant for your arrest."
It seems bad.
Yeah.
Right.
And there were like 4 accusations: insulting the president, that was under Morsi, insulting the president, insulting Islam, spreading false rumors, and disrupting the fabric of society.
It's a little broad.
Yes. How can you disrupt the fabric of society? And that was right after an episode where President Morsi at the time wore kind of a funny hat when he was receiving an award, and I wore like a much bigger hat, like, and that was it. I mean, I didn't do anything. I just went in, and then they removed it, and that was it. So that was kind of like at night. So I called my wife, and I said, like, "Get Nadia," that was my daughter, that she was 2, and it's like, "Go to your parents' house." And the lawyer said, like, "Don't go back to your house because you don't know if the police are going to come show up. And tomorrow, just like stay in the theater, stay over, and voluntarily, you know, turn yourself in." Which I did. But as I go, I talked to the prop master. I said, like, "Get me the hat." So we went with 3 different cars and a pickup truck, especially for the hat. We rented a pickup truck. And the hat was there, and I went there, and I went into the prosecutor office with the big hat, and and then you go, and then the funny thing is, as I go into the office, the police officers who were there started to take selfies with me, and then the people who were working with the prosecutor started taking selfies with me. And he said, "All right, come on, we need to start the interrogation." It's like everybody laughed.
With the hat?
No, the hat is outside because it couldn't fit into the door. And and then I say this, I tell this story a lot. The guy said, like, "All right, so we having 4 accusations. With these accusations, there is a certain episode that is involved, and we have the episodes on DVDs, and we're gonna play these on this computer over there." And we're gonna walk you through it, and you're gonna comment on the accusations.
Right.
And then they were trying to play these CDs on an outdated 1995 desktop, and they cannot for 15, 20 minutes, and I was getting bored. So I stood up trying to help them playing the evidence against me. And
you're good at computers too?
No, but like I was starting to ask them, "Do you have media player? Do you have like, do you have VLC? Usually VLC plays this stuff." And I kind of made a joke, I was like, "Why is the keyboard so sticky?" "Mr. Prosecutor, what do you do here at night?" And so he said, "Okay, it is not working. So we're just gonna pretend that it worked, and we're gonna ask you from the script. But you have to pretend that it's working. Is that okay?" And I told him, "Do I have a choice?" He said, "No." So, "All right, let's go." And he started to ask me like, he would ask me about the certain joke. What did you mean when you said this and this about the president? So, of course, I'm playing stupid. I didn't mean anything. So he started to tell me, and why is this funny? It's like, I don't know. You have to ask the people. It's like, but people are laughing in the theaters. Like, well, you need to ask them why they're laughing. And the thing is, to be questioned about your jokes is the most demoralizing thing can ever happen to you. And then after 6 hours, I was like let on bail, £15,000 at that time. And I went home, and I went to the theater, and the whole thing about me going to that, I started my episode recreating that image going in to the stage. And that was a big moment because it was obvious that the regime at that time embarrassed itself trying to go after a joker.
So you had to deal with propaganda against you?
Yes.
Because they were trying to discredit you?
Yes.
What was one of the craziest propaganda theories against you?
So when I brought Jon Stewart on the show, of course, he's bringing this Jew, on the show, which is like a hidden message. Is like, but the greatest conspiracies that was ever written about me is that Jon Stewart was hired by the CIA in order to recruit me, to teach me how to use satire to bring down the country. That was written in black and white. This was written in black and white in one of a big newspaper. And that was under the Muslim Brotherhood, but it was written by a pro-military author who repeated the same conspiracy under the military.
But how cool if that were true?
Yes. Maybe this is why we don't see Jon Stewart right now.
He grew that beard. It was a whole
Yes.
thing. So then ultimately, it came to an end.
It kind of ended a few times.
Well, the ultimate end, when you left,
Yes.
they fined you.
Yes.
How much was the fine?
£100 million. And that was an arbitration case between me and the channel that actually canceled the show.
Who was your lawyer, Michael Cohen?
I wish that he would give me the same services that Trump had with him. But that was a totally political decision. Because you see, the new regime kind of learned from their predecessor. They're not going to go and interrogate me for the jokes. They have to find a proxy.
Right.
Someone else to go in. It's like, oh, it's a financial dispute. The regime have no problem with Bاسم, but it's a financial dispute. But that can use that in order to even put me on a no-flight list or put me in jail. So the verdict came out 11th of November, 12 noon. And the lawyer called me and said, like, I have already booked a plane for you. You're leaving the country in 4 hours. And I jumped on a plane and I left. And that was 11 November 2014. And I never came back.
The interesting thing about that is that the regime could have, at any point, arrested you, not just interrogated you, shut down the show, ordered the show shut down. There's all sorts of things they could have done in that authoritarian environment, but they didn't. As you say, they had to choose a proxy. So on the one hand, they didn't want to take the strong step against you, but they wanted still you to go away. Mm-hmm. What were they afraid of?
It's appearances. They need to maintain their appearances in front of the Western world. So we have a parliament. Everybody knows that this parliament doesn't do anything, but it's the appearance of the parliament. So they're not coming after me like heads on because of appearances. So when they ask Sisi, did you stop him? No, we didn't have anything.
They still
to
want
do
to
with
deny it, right? But I think that comes as a surprise to a lot of people who think, well, if it's an authoritarian regime, they do what they want. They like to exert power. They like to flex their muscles. But there's still a part of them, and maybe this is true a little bit in Russia and other places as well, that do all these underhanded things and these anti-democratic things and these anti-individual liberty things, but they still want the West to think there is some semblance of democracy and freedom. Is there some strength or some approach that the West can take knowing that that is true, that we're not taking?
Well, here's the question. Don't you think that the West already knows? The West knows. They're not fooling anybody. Now, you have to forgive me for the seriousness of this, but when I talk about like how horrible it is, the dictatorship back in Egypt, and how this is beautiful, and we wish we have your democracy, guys, let's not forget that like all of these dictators, they buy their weapons from the West, and they get the military aid from the West. And the congressmen and the senators who sign these deals, they know exactly what is happening there. And they're doing this just to boost their arms sales. So they know it's just like it's a dance. If you want to oppress your people, just do it in an elegant way. Don't do it North Korea style. Do it our style, you know. But I mean, what is the difference between some of the oppressive regimes in the Gulf and Iran and North Korea or Egypt? It's just like, he's a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch. It's the same thing. France, for example. France is a huge country that is vocal for human rights. But once you pay the money and you get their jet fighters, they're silent. You know? Same thing with Britain, same thing with Germany, same thing with the United States. They just don't want it to be too much on the surface, too much apparent. We're going to give you the aid, we're going to give you the weapons, but just don't make us look bad in front of our constituents, who don't really care. The constituents care more about like the health care and tax cuts and other things. They don't care about it. They just like, don't make too much noise as you are stifling people's voices. So it's a dance at the end of the day, and everybody's in it.
Let me ask you a question about the state of democracy in America. So a lot of people criticize the president, it's their right to do it, and they say he sounds like an autocrat, and he sounds like someone who likes despots. How do you rank Donald Trump, given his rhetoric and actions, against the people that you know are actual autocrats in the world, including Egypt?
Well, I think Trump is trying hard. I think... I think in the air board he will be more of a kind of a tree-hugging liberal. But again, it's not about Donald Trump. It's about the system doesn't allow him to go further. I mean, I think if Donald Trump didn't have the system that stopped him, I mean, I think if it was up to Donald Trump, he would fire you and put you in jail next to Hillary Clinton. But the system doesn't allow him to do that.
So and the system matters.
It's the system, not the person. And this is the thing. In other parts of the world, the system is an accomplice. But here, it's supposed to work as a safeguard. So, and this is why when you see Sisi visiting the White House, you see that like this look of adoration of Trump. It's like, how do you do it? You know, how can I put all of these people in jail?
Yeah. Or when Erdogan visits.
Yeah. But like we keep speaking about individuals, and it's the system that makes a difference.
But so, do you think then that Americans should relax?
No.
And not get so carried away because the system stops them?
No. It's like there's two ways to do it. There's the humorous way. It's like, come on, don't bitch and whine. You don't know what's happening the rest of the world. You can do that. But it really comes down to you earn this kind of level of democracy that you should always fight for. Yeah. That's a big difference. You can't say just because of the rest of the world is like falling apart, it's like, thank God we can still vote in the midterms. You're fighting for a level of excellence and a level of democracy that should always be there. And if somebody is violating this kind of system, you should fight to restore it. And that's the difference. Having said that, I still can't believe that the Democrats, I mean, we talk about the Republicans and Trump, and we talk about democracy and everything, but there are stuff that's happening in this system that boggles me. How come it's so apparent that there are people in your Congress and your Senate that voting for stuff that is absolutely against the welfare and the interests of the American people because they were paid by lobbies?
Great question.
This boggles me. This boggles me because, yes, you have democracy, but at the end of the day, you have people who, I mean, I'm sure that there's not a single person in this country who would ever vote to kill net neutrality. And yet, there were people who were unelected, who gathered in a room, who killed net neutrality because they were paid by big players in the high-tech. There's absolutely, I'm sure that no one in this country would vote for increasing the military budget for another $60 billion, who, by the way, the Democrats voted for it with the Republicans. I'm sure that they would put this $60 billion in healthcare and in education, and yet you find that. So this is the part of...
It's even worse. You even have a member of the cabinet who says forthrightly in front of hundreds and hundreds of people this week, openly, if a lobbyist was going to pay me, I might meet with them.
Yes.
Right? You know, it's interesting. Another thing you've said about the commonality among people who are dictators is that they don't have a sense of humor.
Yes, they are very thin-skinned, and in your case, orange-skinned. I say this a lot. I say this.
So how can people use comedy and humor here for political good and satire? And what's your advice to people who are doing satire in this country?
Do you want me to give advice?
Yeah, of course.
Me, out of all people, I would have benefited from my
We're
advice.
in the Apollo, man.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, there's no advice needed because we've seen that under Bush. The people who did comedy and satire did the same with Bush. They're doing the same with Trump. I don't really think that satire changes the political scene. It is people who change the political scene. As a matter of fact, some people who would watch the late-night comedy shows might think that they have done their job, and when it comes to midterm, they don't go vote, and we're all screwed, and then the one who are laughing at the end are the other side. I think the biggest value for comedy is to bring more people to the table to discuss otherwise very dull topics like healthcare or education or written affairs, so people will be more aware about these issues. Comedy in itself doesn't change the world. It is really up to the people to stand up. So last year when we have like the big Women's March, 750,000 people took the streets in LA, and then 2 weeks later there were like regional elections, only 12% showed up. It's like, yeah. You know, and that's why I was like, oh, come back and do the shows. Like, it doesn't help if you do not have the will to change things yourself. Someone said, like, you know, prayer don't change things, prayer change people, and people change things. Same with comedy.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's the people who's going to do it, not you laughing and falling off of your couch watching Trevor Noah or Sam B or John Oliver. It makes you more aware of what's happening, but it's really up to you to make the change.
So why America? Why did you come to America?
Because I know the language.
Could have gotten to the UK, you know.
And it's easier to get a green card here.
Was.
At my time. Yeah. But now I have like a 9-month-old son, so he's my anchor baby, so I'm not going anywhere, bitches.
You care about the issue of immigration, and one thing that I'm very excited about, and I want to tell folks about, is that you're launching our second podcast under Cafe.
I'm going to have my own podcast, people.
That's right. And it leads me to an observation. You tell me if it's true. So, you know, I used to have a lot of authority. I had subpoena power, and I had to leave that job, not of my own choice. And then I launched a podcast. You had 40 million viewers, very powerful voice. You were basically run out of Egypt, and you launched a podcast. And so, is it true then that the arc of the moral universe is long, but that it bends towards podcasts?
Yes. Yes. And the
That's
name.
What I thought.
Yes, and the name of the podcast is Remade in America. I love it.
What do you think of the state of immigration, immigrants? By the way, by some noise, who here is an immigrant or the child of an immigrant?
I always say, you know, like, can I say, how many Arabs are here? The FBI is coming.
No, they're not. This is the Apollo. Final question. Are you optimistic about the future of America and the world?
I mean, here's what gives me hope sometimes in the city that I live in now, in Los Angeles. And I think this is what will make the change. When people tell me, what do you like more about Los Angeles? First of all, it's like, oh my God, you're in Los Angeles. How about the traffic? It's like, I come from Cairo. What traffic? So, but here's what maybe gives me hope in Los Angeles. My daughter goes to kindergarten in a public school next to us. And she is in a 20-25 student class. And in that class, there are Koreans, Chinese, white people, Jewish people, black people, Indian people, all kind of spectrum. The human spectrum is there, like in a mix. Her best friend, her name is Chloe. Her mom is a Jewish woman from Chicago, and her dad is a Catholic from Cote d'Ivoire. And you have her other best friend is Korean. And when you ask my daughter Nadia, what does Chloe looks like? What does she look like? She doesn't tell her that like she's dark or she's brown. She has like two little things on her hair. What does Sarah look like, which is the Korean? She's like she wears glasses. They do not see that differences. And this is one of those moments that like I made the right decision to come here. And maybe you know when people say, I know it sounds very corny when people say like children are the future, but maybe it is. When you see it in those classrooms, you see it in the wonderful students of Parkland who are kind of like making veteran Congress people shitting their pants. Yeah. And maybe this is where like there's hope for this. And we criticize democracy and the system in America, but what is good about this country, it's dynamic. And there's always a chance to change. And I hope it will change for the better. But I think it really comes down to the younger generation. Maybe this is the future. And maybe saying this, back in the Middle East, it sounds and it looks horrible and it looks disappointing, but the young people there, they're questioning everything. And this is the one thing that has changed after all of these years of destruction. They're questioning everything. They are rethinking everything that they've been told about the military, about the religious authority. So maybe it is, at the end of the day, as corny as it sounds, maybe children are the future.
I don't think it's corny. I think it's true.
Yeah.